If you'd asked me how things were going in my life, I probably would have shrugged and replied, "Not too bad." But that was before I discovered the truth about my wife and her affair with her boss. At that point, I had no solid evidence, though the signs were there: late nights, a new scent of perfume. Then, one evening at a party, it all came crashing down. Her boss approached me, wearing a grin that spoke of smugness, the kind of smile a man wears when he thinks he's won. He clinked his glass against mine, then leaned in with a swagger that oozed disrespect. "Congratulations, Ben," he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "You're going to be a father." I was stunned. Let me be clear, I didn't react right away, not because I was speechless, but because I thought I had misunderstood him. I even turned to Rachel, expecting her to laugh and say it was just some awkward joke. But instead, she gave me that self-satisfied smirk I had seen more and more over the past 6 months. She stared me down and said, "Yeah, and you won't even divorce me because we have a no-fault dissolution agreement." Betrayal doesn't hit like a slap across the face. It sneaks up on you, like a crack forming in the foundation of a house. You don't notice it until it's too late, and by then, everything feels off balance. I didn't say anything. I just smiled, nodded once, and walked away. I wasn't leaving, I just needed to get something from my truck. After retrieving it from the valet, I returned to the party. The music had shifted to something slower and jazzy, while the laughter and clinking glasses continued, oblivious to the storm that had just hit. I saw Rachel at the bar, still engaged in conversation with Greg, laughing as though nothing had changed. But then she caught sight of me. Her smile faltered, and her eyes locked with mine. Desperation crept into her expression as she reached out to me. "Ben, don't do this. Please." I said nothing. I didn't need to. She could already see the look on my face, the look of a man who had nothing left to lose and a plan that didn't include forgiveness. It was in that moment, when I decided I wasn't going to keep swallowing my pain or play the role of the nice guy, that I stopped playing fair. That's when I unleashed what I like to call my thermonuclear vengeance. Let me be clear, when I say no one survives, it's not a metaphor. I'm not a criminal, just a man with a very particular set of skills, a long memory, and a subscription to Adobe Creative Cloud. When people underestimate you long enough, they forget to watch their backs. I stood there in the middle of the ballroom, calm as a surgeon, while everyone around me thought I was holding something dangerous. But no, I was holding an envelope, unassuming, plain, thick, the kind you see in legal dramas, with important documents written across the front. I slid it toward Rachel on the bar, my gaze steady. "Read," I said, my voice barely a whisper. She hesitated, but Greg, still riding high on his drunken bravado, leaned in and asked, "What is this, Ben?" I met his gaze. "Your resignation letter." He snorted, dismissing it. "You're not serious." Rachel unfolded the papers with trembling hands, her eyes scanning the first page. Then, all the color drained from her face. Her lips parted in shock, then closed, and finally opened again like a fish gasping for air. "What is this?" she whispered, voice barely audible. "Proof," I said flatly. "Proof of the affair, of the misuse of company resources, of all the little games you've been playing while I've been the one paying the bills and doing your laundry." Greg's face turned a furious red, the kind I usually only see on warning signs. "How did you?" he began, but I cut him off. "You really shouldn't let your side piece share an iCloud account with her husband," I said with a smirk. "Rookie mistake." The room fell into stunned silence. A few people gasped. Someone dropped a glass. The band stopped playing. Even the bartender paused mid-polish to take in what was happening. Yeah, I had the receipts. Emails. Texts. Hotel bills. I tucked them all in for good measure. Turns out the corporate card Rachel used for those out-of-town conferences was still in my name. Oops. I fixed my gaze on Rachel, the kind of look I hadn't given her in years. It was the same look I used to wear before we got married, back when I was building my real estate business from the ground up. It was the version of me that didn't tolerate failure, didn't make excuses, and didn't stand for betrayal disguised as personal growth. By this point, everything was in place. The dissolution papers, the financial documents, everything. Before I could say another word, Rachel's hand shot out, as if to stop me. "Ben, wait." "I'm not waiting any more," I replied calmly. Her boss, the father of her child, suddenly looked concerned. "You're bluffing," he said. "This is just—" I cut him off by pulling out my phone and tapping the screen. Without a hitch, a video began playing across the ballroom's mounted projectors. I had uploaded it remotely to the AV system, a task that took me 2 hours and a little incentive to the tech guy. Worth every penny. The video started with a slideshow of text conversations between Rachel and Greg, then moved on to hotel check-ins. It showed Rachel in lingerie and Greg, shirtless, grinning like a college frat boy. Everything was time-stamped and clearly incriminating. I stood there, still and composed at the center of the room, while the video continued. Greg, flustered, scrambled to stop it, but it was already too late. "Consider this my resignation," I said, my voice even. "From this marriage. From this farce. From ever being someone's doormat again." I placed my wedding ring on the bar next to Rachel's drink and, without another word, turned and walked out. No dramatic door slam, no shouting, not a single punch thrown, even though I probably had every right to. As I stepped into the cold night air, my hands in my pockets and my heart unexpectedly calm, I realized something. Rachel had tried to humiliate me in front of everyone. Instead, she had just given me the green light to execute the plan I had been quietly preparing for months. 6 months before that gala, I had noticed something strange. Rachel had changed the passcode on her phone. It didn't seem like much at first. Then she changed her laptop password. Still nothing to raise an alarm. But when she opened a second bank account without telling me, that's when I shifted gears. I began making copies of everything I could access: emails, receipts, digital backups. I installed a tracker app on her tablet, the one she had forgotten to log out of. I started paying closer attention to her every move, the small changes in her behavior. Her wardrobe shifted, moving from professional attire to something you'd expect to see in a romance novel. Rachel had always seen me as the steady, reliable one, the quiet guy who could be counted on. She never saw the man who had built a business from nothing, who watched his father leave for work at 4 a.m. every day with calloused hands and quiet strength. She didn't know that I paid attention or that when someone crossed me, I didn't shout. I moved. So, by the time she and Greg decided to play out their little affair behind my back, I was already several steps ahead. The divorce papers had been ready for weeks. I had filed them 2 weeks before the gala, working with an attorney who specialized in asset protection and reputational damage. The prenup was solid. She hadn't bothered to read it carefully when we signed it, but I had included a clause about infidelity that would void any spousal support. I hadn't expected any of this, but I never liked being caught off guard. And as it turned out, I also owned the house. The title had always been in my name. It had been an investment property I'd flipped during the hot market years ago, and I'd never bothered to change it. Now, that turned out to be a blessing. Around noon the next day, Rachel called. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was soft, half apologetic, with just the right amount of vulnerability to try to invoke some sympathy. "Ben, I know last night was a shock. We didn't mean for it to happen like that. Can we just talk?" Then Greg called. His voicemail was nothing like Rachel's. It was angry, full of complaints. I caught him completely off guard. Imagine that, a man who'd been sleeping with another man's wife and bragging about it, blindsided by the consequences. Later that same day, I transferred all our shared funds into an escrow account, pending approval from the court. I also made an anonymous report to Rachel's company's ethics department, providing all the incriminating evidence. It's important to note that Greg was technically her superior, and in my eyes, that was a clear breach of company policy. 2 days later, HR reached out to Greg for a formal review, and just like that, their little empire began to crumble. The morning after Rachel's HR meeting, Greg's HR meeting, Rachel showed up at the house, pounding on the door like she was trying to break it down. This wasn't a polite knock. No, it was a full-on assault, as if she thought the SWAT team was on the other side. I cracked the door just wide enough to speak through. "You don't live here anymore." Her mascara had started to run, which was unexpected. Rachel never cried unless it served a purpose. But this time, without an audience and without any performance, the tears were just raw and real. "Ben, please," she said, voice trembling. "Greg's been suspended. There's an investigation. You don't understand what this is doing to me." I nearly laughed. To you. Seems like a fair trade. You gave him a child, I gave him a disciplinary review. She winced. I didn't gloat, not exactly. But there was something darkly satisfying about seeing the scales of justice finally tip in my favor. Then came the line I knew was coming. We made a mistake. I crossed my arms and leaned against the doorframe, calm as a stone. Which part? Sleeping with him? Announcing it to the world? Or assuming I'd be the loyal fool? You're acting like I meant to hurt you, she said. I stared at her for a long moment, then spoke with quiet certainty. Rachel, you planned a pregnancy reveal with your boss and coordinated legal maneuvers against your husband like it was a PR campaign. That's not a mistake. That's strategic planning. You have to understand, our town thrives on appearances. Brunches, charity events, curated public images. Rachel didn't just thrive in that world, she was born for it. Her Instagram was practically a showcase of her perfect life. Her social skills were as rehearsed as a stage performance. So, I made sure that world saw the truth. I didn't create any false narratives, didn't embellish anything, just cold, hard facts, all neatly time-stamped. The pregnancy announcement tied directly to Greg's name, office emails, and receipts. It spoke for itself. At first, the congratulatory messages flooded in, heart emojis, warm wishes, but by the end of the week, her profiles were locked down. Greg's digital presence vanished entirely, and her company released a vague statement about leadership restructuring. After that, I disappeared for a while. I hadn't been to Montana since my college days, so I rented a quiet cabin near Flathead Lake. I brought a few good books, my old fishing rod, and a bottle of bourbon I'd been saving since I turned 35. I didn't think about her or him. Instead, I focused on the cool mornings, the still waters, and what it meant to start fresh, a skill I'd learned to master more than once. But, as it always does, the past caught up with me. On my third night there, I received a call from Rachel's sister. "Ben, I know this is the last thing you want to hear," she began, "but I thought you should know that Rachel's staying with our parents now. Her dad, the one who always grilled me about whether I could keep up with her ambition, has gone strangely quiet during family calls. Her mom, the one who once called me a step down, hasn't hosted her bridge club since everything blew up. And Greg? He's on official leave. Word is the company is just waiting for things to settle down before they quietly show him the door." Her sister didn't sound shocked, just disappointed. She said she'd seen the signs for years. Rachel had always craved the next exciting thing, never caring about the wreckage left in her wake. "I just wanted to say," she added, "you didn't deserve any of it." "I'm sorry." By my second week in Montana, I felt something shift within me. I wasn't angry anymore. To be clear, I hadn't forgiven her. That kind of peace takes time. I don't claim to have it all figured out. But the intense fire I felt that night at the gala had faded into something calmer, more lucid. Then, one morning, as I was out back chopping wood like some flannel-wearing cliché, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. A truck was pulling up the driveway. I set the axe down next to the stump and wiped the sweat from my palms against my jeans, squinting into the hazy sunlight. The dust hadn't even settled when a familiar figure emerged. Eli Mason. Same tousled hair, same cocky grin, like every moment was leading up to a punchline only he knew. He gave a lazy salute. "Well, I'll be damned. You really went full frontier, huh?" "Eli." I blinked, not entirely sure if I was imagining things. "What the hell are you doing here?" He held up a folded postcard, my handwriting barely visible in the sunlight. "Got your note." Sounded like a distress signal dressed up as a retreat. I had sent it, sure, some half-joking remark about trading conference calls for campfires, but I didn't expect it to pull Eli across state lines. Apparently, he had been keeping tabs on the mess in my life from a safe distance. He was handling high-profile legal cases in Denver now, but we'd always kept in touch, occasional texts, memes, half-hearted check-ins. When Rachel's world came crashing down, though, he didn't offer condolences. He just packed up and drove. That night, we sat on the porch, both of us in flannel shirts, bourbon in hand, as if we were picking up a conversation from 10 years ago. After a long sip, Eli said, "I've got to hand it to you. You didn't just burn the bridge. You wiped the whole damn city off the map. What did you use?" An HR landmine, a digital trail, office gossip, or something else? All of the above, I said with a shrug, minus the dramatic soundtrack. He chuckled. Knew there was some chaos in you. Always did. I'm not chaotic, I replied. I just stopped pretending not to see what was right in front of me. Eli stuck around for a few days, cooking better meals than I ever had, beating me at chess so badly it felt personal. But more than anything, he reminded me of who I was before I got caught up in the illusion of the picture-perfect power couple. One night, as the flames flickered low in the fireplace, he turned to me and said, "You know what your problem was? You were trying to build a home with someone who was using you as a stepping stone for their own climb." That hit me like a sledgehammer. I had invested so much into the foundation, the walls, the whole structure. But Rachel, she was already picking out curtains for a penthouse she never intended to share. We weren't just broken. We were fundamentally incompatible, from blueprint to beam. 3 weeks later, I returned to town. Clean-shaven, clear-headed. The house was still mine, legally. The divorce paperwork was progressing. Rachel had gone quiet. No texts, no emails, no passive-aggressive drive-bys. Nothing. Then, something I hadn't seen coming hit me out of the blue. Greg's wife called. I didn't even know the guy was married. Her name was Mara. Her voice on the phone was sharp, efficient, as though she'd been through battles and was done pretending she hadn't. "I think we should talk in person," she said. We met at a quiet cafe on the far side of town. She walked in wearing a sleek suit, every detail of her look precise, her face a mask that showed she wasn't here for sympathy. She folded her hands on the table and said, "I just wanted you to know, you're not the only one cleaning up after our ex's self-destruction." We exchanged stories, hers more documented than mine. She had a folder full of timelines, receipts, screenshots, everything meticulously laid out, from hotel stays to overlapping dates. "Rachel wasn't the first," Mara said, her tone even. "She was just the most recent. Charming, slippery, but not half as clever as Greg thinks." I muttered, "Yeah, that's been the theme lately." Mara paused before sliding the folder across the table, her motion deliberate, final. "I don't know what you're planning next," she said, her voice steady. "But if you need leverage, here's everything I've dug up." I glanced at the folder and then met her gaze. "Why are you helping me?" "Because," she began. "I've been where you are," she said. Used, walked on. "I've got kids to consider, and you've got a future you deserve to take back. This benefits both of us." I'd always imagined starting over as pulling yourself out of a dark hole, struggling just to breathe again. But it wasn't like that at all. It felt more like stepping into an old room and finally clearing away the clutter. Quiet, deliberate, a little isolating, but in a good way. The kind of solitude that lets your thoughts settle rather than scream at you. I dove back into work full-time. Real estate had been good to me before my marriage crumbled, and it welcomed me back without fanfare. Deals started moving again, listings picked up, and I found myself sharper, more focused than I had been in years. Funny how betrayal has a way of clearing your vision. Everything suddenly seemed clearer. About a month after I returned from Montana, I found an envelope in my mailbox. Not an email, not a voicemail, an actual letter, handwritten in neat script. I stared at it over a cup of black coffee, unsure whether I should even open it. Inside was a single page. No drama, just facts. She'd left her parents' place and was staying at a friend's. Said she didn't want the house or the car, only to finalize the divorce smoothly. At the bottom of the letter in her handwriting was, "I made my choices. You made yours. I'm sorry things ended this way. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just closure." I read it 3 times, each time looking for more, but there were no excuses, no attempt to twist the narrative. Just a simple, honest admission. And honestly, I respected that more than any of her justifications over the past year. I didn't respond. Some conclusions don't need an exclamation point. A week later, I was meeting with a contractor at one of the new properties when I ran into someone from high school, Tara Kelly. Back then, she had a way of owning any room she walked into. Sharp tongue, quick wit, sarcasm as her signature. Now, she ran her own architecture firm. Turns out, she was bidding on the same project I was. Ben Garrison, she laughed. Didn't you move to Alaska or something? Close enough, I said. Montana. Voluntary exile. She studied me for a moment, tilting her head. You look different. Lighter. Got divorced. Ah, she nodded. That explains why your face doesn't look like it's been carved from stress. I laughed. She was still as unfiltered and fearless as ever. We grabbed coffee and caught up. Turns out, she'd been through her own divorce a couple of years ago. No affair, just two people who had slowly drifted apart. We swapped war stories, shared a few lessons learned, laughed more than I thought I would. She didn't pry into my details, and I didn't feel the need to explain. She just understood. You know, she said as we headed to our cars, people act like starting over is tragic, lonely, but honestly, it can be cleansing. Like gutting a house down to the studs. Exactly, I said. Clears out the rot. She handed me her business card. If you ever want help designing something new, give me a call. I wasn't in any rush. I wasn't chasing some emotional rebound. But for the first time in a long time, the road ahead didn't look like a dead end. It looked open. Back at home, I sat down with a file. Mara, Greg, and soon-to-be ex had handed me bank transfers, hidden accounts, and expense reports that felt more like secrets than business. I didn't feel vengeance as I flipped through the evidence. Just peace. Confirmation that I hadn't imagined any of it. I wasn't crazy. I took it to my lawyer. Things were starting to move quickly now. Later that week, I ran into Rachel at the grocery store, the first time I'd seen her since the gala. She hesitated when she saw me. You look good, she said. Thanks, I replied. You look like someone shopping for produce. She let out a small laugh, but it didn't reach her eyes. I heard the settlement's almost final. Yep, I said, casually dropping a bag of flour into the cart. Just a few more signatures, and it's over. She adjusted her basket. I wanted to thank you for not turning this into a war. I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't the same woman from the ballroom. The one who used legal tricks like daggers. She just looked tired. Real. I didn't drag it out. I didn't need to, I said. There was nothing left to drag. And then, something unexpected. It was real, she said, her voice low. You and me. At least in the beginning. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Some truths don't require an answer, just acknowledgement. I walked past her, kept shopping, never turned back. That night, I got a text from Tara. Coffee. No pressure. Just caffeine and sarcasm. I sat with the message for a moment, then typed back, sure. I could use both.